Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
So I want you to imagine making a split-second, highly technical decision while 80,000 people are just screaming at you.
Sounds terrifying, honestly.
Right. And then for the next 7 days, millions of people dissect your perceived mistake on social media, in newspapers, on TV. And the kicker, your employer legally forbids you from defending yourself or even just, explaining your process.
It's a uniquely brutal position.
Exactly. So today we're looking at top New Zealand referee Ben O'Keefe. He argues that it is time to break that exact silence and fundamentally change how officials interact with the public. But real quick, before we dive into the mechanics of his proposal, make sure to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in the description.
Yeah, you won't want to miss what we've got coming up.
For sure. So let's get into it. What exactly is the core problem O'Keefe is pointing out here?
Well, the problem O'Keefe is highlighting, it addresses this massive asymmetry in how the sport handles the post-game narrative. Like, consider the choreography of a test match the second the final whistle blows.
Okay.
The players, who are literally still dripping in sweat, get pulled right in front of sponsor boards. They have to give their take on the turning points immediately.
Yeah, adrenaline's still pumping and everything.
Yeah, exactly. And the head coaches, they walk straight into the media room, sit behind the microphones, and tell their side of the story. They get to frame the narrative for the press right away.
But the reps don't.
Right. The match officials, the people who actually arbitrated the entire 80 minutes and enforced the laws, they're completely absent. They're left in the spotlight, exposed to the court of public opinion without, a single avenue to explain their performance.
It brings to mind this pretty stark analogy, actually. I mean, imagine a high-profile court case wrapping up, right? The verdict is read, and immediately the prosecution walks out to the steps of the courthouse to spin their angle to the press.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And then the defense attorneys go out and give their completely opposing spin to the cameras. But the judge, the person who actually interpreted the law, they're effectively gagged, smuggled out the back door, and told not to speak to anyone.
That is exactly what we do to rugby referees.
It is. And, O'Keefe knows this heat better than anyone. Just think back to the 2023 Rugby World Cup. He was the man in the middle for South Africa's those incredibly tight knockout wins over France and England.
Oh, the scrutiny he faced was astronomical.
Especially after that one-point quarterfinal victory over the host nation, France. Every single ruck, every scrum penalty, and, that famous Cheslin-Colby charge down, it was debated ad nauseum.
And in the current system, O'Keefe just had to sit in silence. He had to watch pundits and fans debate his internal thought process for him.
Yeah, which is maddening.
But what makes his current proposal so compelling is the specific timeline he's suggesting, because he's not asking for a microphone to be shoved in his face the moment he steps off the pitch.
Right, which would be a disaster anyway.
Totally. Speaking immediately after an 80-minute physical and mental marathon. Terrible idea for an official. Look, when a coach speaks post-match, their job is inherently subjective. They're advocating for their team, protecting their players.
And fighting for their own jobs a lot of the time.
Exactly. Emotions are understandably running hot. But a referee's job is purely objective. So in the immediate aftermath, a referee only has their live, in-the-moment perception of what just happened.
Right. Their adrenaline is still peaking. You can't just walk off the pitch and deliver a perfectly rational, legally sound breakdown of a highly complex penalty from the 78th minute. You haven't even seen the reverse angles yet.
You lack the data required for objective analysis, which is why O'Keefe is advocating for a dedicated referee press conference on a Monday or a Tuesday.
Tuesday, okay.
Yeah, it completely shifts the paradigm. By Tuesday, the emotional temperature of the weekend has dropped significantly, and more importantly, it gives the referee the necessary time to undergo their internal review process.
So they're actually looking at the tape.
Exactly. They sit down with their management staff, they look at the wide-angle tactical footage, they consult with their referee coaches, they get perfectly aligned on the application of the law.
So they aren't just guessing based on blurry memories.
Right. They are providing objective, thoroughly researched feedback.
But, I have to wonder if a Tuesday press conference is simply too late. By Tuesday, those viral slow-motion clips have already done their damage, haven't they? The narrative is pretty much set by Sunday morning. Can a Tuesday review actually undo 3 days of internet outrage?
Well, it doesn't necessarily undo the initial outrage,
Yeah.
but it establishes a definitive authoritative endpoint to the speculation.
Okay, how so?
Think about how a rugby law actually works in practice, like the jackal at the tackle area. To a fan in the stands, it just looks like a mess of massive bodies crashing into each other.
Just absolute chaos, yeah.
Right. But the referee is looking for a highly specific sequence. Did the tackler release? Did the ball carrier present the ball? Did the arriving defensive player support their own body weight before contesting?
There's a checklist.
Exactly. So a fan might post a slow motion video on Sunday showing the arriving player on the ball just screaming for a penalty. But on Tuesday, the referee can isolate the exact frame from an alternate angle showing that the player's elbow was resting on the ground.
Meaning they weren't supporting their weight.
Exactly. It replaces emotional speculation with mechanical fact.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. O'Keefe brings up Nigel Owen's show, Whistle Watch, which is produced by World Rugby, as kind of a baseline for this. Like, it acts as a platform for clearing up incidents from the weekend.
It's a great show.
It is. But O'Keefe is essentially saying that while a produced show is great, the officials themselves need the agency to stand up publicly. He wants the power to look at the camera and say, hand up, we got that decision completely wrong.
Or to meticulously break down the laws.
Yeah, to be able to say, I know this looked controversial to the home crowd, but here's the exact law that proves it was correct.
That level of transparency treats the fans with immense respect. He wants to dismantle the mystery of the whistle. Because when a referee makes a highly technical call that goes unexplained, the average fan doesn't, dive into the World Rugby law book.
No, of course not. They just see their team being penalized.
And that confusion ferments into anger. By stepping up and owning the decisions, including the inevitable human errors, O'Keefe is treating the fans as learners who actually want to understand the game.
And that fermentation of anger doesn't just stay online, though. It physically manifests in the stadium the next time that official walks out. Which makes me curious. We want to know where you stand on this potential solution. Drop a comment below. Would you actually watch a detailed breakdown of rugby laws on a Tuesday? Or do you think weekly referee press conferences would just give fans more things to argue about?
It's a tough question.
It really is.
Yeah.
So let us know. And make sure you subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in the description so you don't miss our breakdown of those comments. So going back to the timeline, the way this Tuesday review operates, it seems like an attempt to directly combat the modern media cycle.
Oh, it is a direct countermeasure to the outrage machine. Let's trace a typical controversy. A contentious decision happens on a Saturday night. By Sunday morning, a fan account posts a 4-second zoomed-in video played at half speed.
Completely cutting out the preceding phase of play, usually.
Exactly. Then by Sunday afternoon, an ex-player quote tweets it with some provocative caption. On Monday, mainstream sports media picks it up and writes articles about the uproar.
And then by Tuesday, podcasters are dedicating whole segments to arguing about it.
Right. The narrative spirals for an entire week simply because there is a vacuum of authoritative information. Nature abhors a vacuum, and in sports media, outrage is the cheapest material available to fill it.
So you're essentially cutting off the oxygen supply to that entire cycle. If World Rugby implements O'Keefe's idea, that vacuum is sealed shut by Tuesday afternoon.
Completely. The referee comes out, provides the definitive answer based on the law and the alignment of the coaching staff, and the speculation hits a brick wall. It transforms a week of toxic outrage into a moment of collective understanding.
It forces pundits to argue against the actual mechanics of the law, rather than their imagined version of what the referee was thinking.
Exactly.
Now, we've talked a lot about how referees deal with the media and the post-game noise online, but I want to pivot to how they process literal noise, the actual physical wall of sound inside a packed stadium.
Yeah, the crowd.
Right, you hear commentators constantly talk about home field advantage or suggest a referee is, buckling under the pressure of the crowd when a 50-50 call goes to the home team.
This was honestly one of the most revealing parts of O'Keefe's perspective, because it's so easy to assume that 80,000 screaming fans must sway a referee's internal decision-making.
But O'Keefe completely rejects that premise. He insists that the fans jeering, whistling, screaming for forward passes, it essentially just becomes white noise to him once the game starts. He claims it doesn't actually influence his decisions.
But he does make a very specific distinction there.
He does. He admits that the crowd impacts his sharpness.
And that distinction between influence and sharpness is vital. It tells us so much about the biology of officiating. The crowd isn't whispering the laws of the game into his ear, right? And they aren't intimidating him into blowing the whistle. Instead, they're providing an energetic baseline.
And he proved this with an incredibly unique real-world experiment. He brought up the 2021 British and Irish Lions series against the Springboks.
Oh, right, the bubble games?
Yeah, because of the pandemic. Those test matches were played behind closed doors, so you have these massive, cavernous stadiums completely empty of fans. O'Keefe was reffing the second test, and he noted that he acutely missed the crowd going oof at the big collisions.
That collective gasp.
Exactly. Normally, when you hear 60,000 people collectively gasp at a massive hit, it prompts the referee to immediately double-check the tackle area for foul play. Without the crowd, he had to rely entirely on his own unprompted vision.
Which is incredibly taxing.
But this brings up a massive question about reliance. Like, if O'Keefe is using the crowd's reaction to prompt him to check for foul play, is that an organic, helpful alarm bell? Or is it actually a slight crutch for officials? Are referees relying too much on the fans to tell them where to look?
See, I don't see it as a crutch at all. I see it as a highly evolved environmental sensory tool.
Okay, break that down for me.
Let's look at the neuroscience of human perception in a high-stress environment. A rugby referee's brain is processing visual data at absolute maximum capacity. They're tracking 30 massive, incredibly fast athletes moving in complex patterns.
Yeah, it's chaotic.
They're watching the ball, monitoring the offside line, anticipating the next phase. The human eye can only focus sharply on about 2 degrees of the visual field at any given time. That's your foveal vision. Everything else is just peripheral motion detection. Your attention is a strictly finite resource.
So think of the referee like a computer processor running at 99% utilization. The crowd isn't writing new code or changing the rules of the software. They're just acting as a push notification.
Precisely. The crowd isn't making the decision. The crowd isn't analyzing the tackle and concluding, that was direct head contact with a high degree of danger and no mitigation.
Right.
The crowd is simply making a sudden visceral noise, but that noise triggers the amygdala in the referee's brain. It's an involuntary acoustic startle reflex. When you hear a loud, sudden gasp from your environment, you instinctively redirect that 2-degree cone of sharp foveal vision to the source of the danger.
The crowd provides the raw data, the "hey, look over here" signal.
Exactly. And then the referee applies the sharp clinical lens of the law to see if an actual offense occurred.
So in 2021, when the stadiums were empty, O'Keefe essentially had to turn off his notifications. He had to manually refresh his screen every 2 seconds to scan the entire horizon for foul play himself.
Which drained his cognitive battery twice as fast. The lack of a crowd during that Lions series proved just how integral this symbiotic relationship is. The fan atmosphere and the officials' alertness are deeply tied together.
It really highlights the sheer mental toll of refereeing at the elite level.
Yeah.
We demand utter perfection from these officials in real time, surrounded by screaming fans, dealing with athletes who are pushing the absolute limits of physics.
The fact that they get the vast majority of these highly technical calls correct on the fly is practically a miracle of cognitive processing.
It really is. So synthesizing everything O'Keefe has put on the table today, what does this all mean for the future of the sport? We started with his plea for World Rugby to innovate off the field, to give officials a platform on Tuesdays. And we've ended up uncovering just how deeply connected the referee, the fans, and the media really are.
It's an ecosystem.
Yes, an ecosystem. And right now that ecosystem is fundamentally broken because one of the most important species in it, the referee, is legally and structurally isolated from communicating.
And it's an ecosystem that relies entirely on trust to function. And trust in any system is built through transparency. Ben O'Keefe isn't asking for the rules of rugby to be made easier for him.
No.
He isn't asking for less scrutiny from the media or the fans. If anything, he's asking for significantly more structured scrutiny. By volunteering to front the media on a Tuesday, he's willing to put his own human fallibility on display for the good of the game. He wants the accountability. But this does leave us with a final, rather profound question to consider regarding human nature.
Oh, let's hear it.
If World Rugby does innovate and referees start fronting the media on Tuesdays, openly admitting their human errors and meticulously explaining the complex laws behind controversial calls, will it truly foster empathy and reduce the abuse they receive from the stands and online? Or, by giving the media and the public a detailed frame-by-frame breakdown of exactly where and how a mistake was made, Will it just give angry fans more verified ammunition to use against them? Will dissecting a mistake publicly just make the abuse more precise?
Wow, that is a heavy, lingering thought, and definitely something you should ponder as you reflect on the mechanics of outrage and accountability in sports as the ultimate double-edged sword of transparency. Well, we want to thank you for diving into this complex issue with us today. Before we go, please remember to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in the description. Thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive, and we'll look forward to you listening to our next episode.